Welcome to Scale Without Chaos, the podcast on business growth, visionary leadership, and scalable systems. Each week, you'll hear real stories, the messy parts, and the proven strategies that help leaders grow without burning out their team or themselves. And yes, you'll definitely hear a few spicy takes along the way. Here are some highlights from this week's episode.
The core values have always been like a progress towards perfection and, done is better than perfect.
I actually had a director of product say to me one time, if we have a perfect product release, it was in development too long. And I believe that fully. And now, this week's episode. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Scale Without Chaos. I'm your host, Samantha Real. Today is a little bit different from what we've been talking about in terms of people, processes, and systems and frameworks. We're going to take a break from all of that and get into the other side of what I really like to dive into on this podcast, the actual examples of people who are building businesses quickly at scale and honestly doing a really good job of it. So my guest today is Melissa Rosenthal. She is the co-founder at Outlever, but has a really very impressive resume. So I'll stop there, Melissa, and let you introduce yourself and your background. But thank you so much for joining me on this podcast today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm Melissa Rosenthal. My background is kind of an interesting mix of digital media and SaaS. I was very early at BuzzFeed, and I helped grow their global creative team there in marketing from, I think I was the 10th employee to over 1,000
wow.
people. Yeah.
Wow.
So very early there and kind of really got my feet wet in digital media, digital marketing, what was happening. That was kind of when the internet was the Wild West. That was a very interesting time. And a lot of the experimentation and learnings from that experience really shaped my entire kind of trajectory. I then went to go help found a company called Cheddar, which was a live streaming media news network. Still is, but when we started, it was a little different. And then we sold that to a cable company. And I was like, I need to escape digital media. I think I needed a change and I'd always wanted to be in tech. So I went over to a Series A company called ClickUp, which is a global work management and kind of workplace convergence software that allows people to like do all of their work in one place collectively. And that was an amazing ride. I was their chief creative officer and we scaled that. And now that company's looking to go public. So had a really nice, like interesting background between kind of all of the different roles and verticals and industries that I've kind of spanned. And that's led me to found the company that I founded today, Outlever.
Yeah, it's all very cool. So many of those companies I recognized. Obviously, I was a BuzzFeed junkie, I think. I loved the content. Any content BuzzFeed was putting out, I was there for it. And so many ClickUp too. I mean, my company used ClickUp. So it's just when I saw those logos on your profile, I said, I definitely need to talk to her. So when you started Outlever, what were you seeing in the market that wasn't being met? Like, what is the why behind founding Outlever?
Yeah. So we're like kind of an interesting place in the company too, like where we're like, what is the future of what we're doing? You know, I feel like that's always the founder thing, right? But when we founded Outlever, there were a couple things that were happening. Digital media like existed for a very long time based on monetization of eyeballs. And when I was at BuzzFeed and when I was at Cheddar, you know, our sources of revenue, it was advertising. And it worked because there wasn't a distribution of eyeballs and content and communities the way that there is now with TikTok and Instagram and all of these platforms where people are finding information in not a centralized place. So we built those models around advertising. And, you know, I always thought back then, which like isn't a thing you question when things are going really well, but why can't, you know, all these companies are spending millions of dollars with us to borrow eyeballs, to borrow attention for a very short period of time. Why can't they just build this themselves? Like some variety of it. I'm not saying they need to become BuzzFeed or they need to become Cheddar, but like there's elements of that if they invested in would probably scale and pay off in dividends versus like spending millions on a 2-week flight with a media company.
Yeah.
Again, like not the question to
Yeah.
fully ask at that time, but the reality now is that's kind of really come to fruition, and media companies really can't exist in this environment. That model is really over. Spending a ton of advertising dollars on media, like that's like there's really not like a ton of growth there. Like it still exists,
Right.
but it's just not, we're seeing like a really interesting, I would say, decline in what that model is and capable of. So
Hmm.
our whole motion is like, and then I went to ClickUp, and I ran the global creative team, and a lot of what the challenge was there is our customer and our ICP at ClickUp was, role every single role, from engineering managers to project managers to brand managers to CMOs, like anyone could be the buyer. And it was from teams of, 10 to thousands. So you're talking about
Right.
everyone. And it's really like, we had a very B2C approach, which is great. Like that's how you reach a lot of eyeballs. But the problem is to be able to have these very specific conversations, right? And like create content around your buyer when it's your buyer is kind of everyone across, a ton of different roles. And your ICP set is really like vast. It's just not possible. Like you can have a really healthy
Right.
budget and you can have a big team, and creating that amount of quality content at scale just isn't possible. So Outlever is sort of the convergence of both of these things that I saw in my time at SaaS and digital media. We effectively turn companies into their own owned media channels where they can
Sure.
own the conversations that matter to them. We create content at scale using our tooling and our products, and we allow them to effectively operate a news media entity for, like it wouldn't have been possible for them to really build these things internally. It takes a lot of time, a lot of
Yeah.
effort, of understanding. And we allow them to do that at scale. And there's a ton of benefits that kind of come with that. So that was, it's sort of this like this interesting like wedge into a problem that I think is actually much bigger than this, which is
For
the
sure.
um the I would say just like the silos that like exist within teams, marketing teams, content teams, creative teams, sales teams, like none of those teams really talk. And there's a lot of ball dropping, there's a lot of inefficiency. So this is like our wedge into kind of how we think about the future of like all of those things converging. And I think there'll be this like what we want to lead is sort of the great convergence of all of this. But right now, like our product is sort of a wedge into finding out more about that. And we've built, a really great customer set. We have 40 like enterprise level customers,
Nice.
a lot of
Yeah.
public companies that are using us. And, I mean, it's amazing because they help you build the roadmap. They help you build a lot of
Right.
your product. They tell you all of like so many wonderful things about like where they stand, what they're struggling with. So, yeah, it's a little TLDR.
No, that's all great. So it's one thing to create your own company. It's one thing to then also create your own category, which is
Mhm.
really what it sounds like you're doing here.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what we're doing, like we don't have competitors like doing what we're
No,
doing, and the category
no.
needs to sort of be explained and introduced. And while it's like so like I can rattle this off to you and it's second nature to me, yeah, it's certainly like we need to explain what this is, and we need to the funny thing about it is once we introduce it, people are like, well, that makes a ton of sense. Like that
Yes.
feels, they're like, that sounds too good to be true. That's like
No,
often what
right?
we hear. And we're like, oh,
Yeah.
we do all this for you, and here are all the benefits and all the ROI and all the results. And yeah, I mean, it is like creating a new category, and I think we'll continue to create a new category with like where we want to head with this, which is it's a lot. It's better not thinking about that when I think you're doing it, and I've always like had that within my entire career, the naivety and like not thinking and like not thinking too much about what you're stepping into. I mean, at least for me, is like kind of a superpower. Because had I known like what this would be, kind of knew, you kind of have an idea, but understanding like like the full weight of what I was stepping into, better not to think about, better not to know fully,
Right. Yeah. I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more about that because so I mean
Yeah.
obviously what I'm doing I'm building a brand and I'm building a podcast. That's a pretty defined thing.
Yeah.
Although some of the concepts are not defined, but I can't even imagine jumping into something where you're like nope, if I had known this I wouldn't have done it. Like what if
Yeah,
that's
I
that's
don't know. Yeah, for sure, for sure. I don't know if it's like wouldn't have done it. I think like what we're doing is sort of amorphous, but the
fair.
like because it's amorphous, it allows us to wedge ourselves into a ton of different departments within every company. And where we're
Right.
finding our wins is like what we're doing now works well, but there's so much more. There's so much like green grass out there that we can now take over and we can build product for. So I think it's like, I think about this every day, what you just said. Like, I don't think I would do anything differently. But we were definitely like playing on hard mode right now, being very this is this definitely hard mode. And I think like every day we're like, are we doing something wrong? This is so hard. I think a lot of people feel that way, but it's so hard. It's so hard.
Yeah. And like I was saying to you earlier too, I mean, it's definitely sorry for the listeners. I was in some of the prep. I was talking to Melissa about how you choose your hard, right?
Mhm.
You choose what layer of hard or what flavor of hard you're going after. And I think it's you might not necessarily know that it's going to be what flavor of hard when you actually choose it. You just kind of go with it and say, "Yep, we're moving in that direction."
Yeah. Again, like, yeah, I don't like, there's nothing like we're right, like on that path. And like, it all has like led up to like where we are. And I think the goal is like creating a product and going into market and working with a bunch of people and seeing what goes next. Like, we're also in such a interesting time where everyone is pivoting. Every journey feels very like non-linear now. It's like every company has become like has been three companies before what they actually end up
Mhm.
doing as
Right.
their like mainstay product, right? So yeah, I mean, like that. It's hard to be like, well, I regret X or I regret Y. There's not. We've learned so much. Like we took on more than we were able to when we first started, which was insane. And that helps though. It's all like we forced ourselves to get into a position where we can now handle what we can handle, but we also realize like. I think your goal as you see progress, they hopefully grow. And, our goals were like, I think we can do quite a bit of damage with this, but we can't probably get to 100 million. So how do we do that? Like what's our North Star? If we want to get to 100 million in revenue, like what do we need to build to get there? And what are the pieces we need to put into place? And that's kind of where we are now.
I want to pause on those questions because those are so important. Like getting to your North Star, especially when you're starting to scale at whatever phase that you're in, making sure that you have those answered. Those are just it's necessary. How you can't go any further without them, really. And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
amazing.
The crazy thing about it is like, the job and the work and all of that, like that is what it is, right? Like you become it, you grow and the product evolves and you're working with new customers and all of that. And there's but everything becomes like kind of routine, right? You understand there's like, there's, you can see behind corners a little bit on kind of everything. And it
Mhm.
becomes like after a while, it stabilizes, especially as your product stabilizes. The one thing that's like becomes very exciting, but painful, I would say, is the conversations on like where to go and how to go. Because like
Mm,
that is such like you're entering into just like infinite possibility and infinite options and infinite structure and infinite decisions that you need to make every day. So while you can maintain your level of like what you're doing today, and
mhm.
that becomes a more like an easier thing than it was 6 months,
Right.
a year ago. The next
Exactly.
what's next is the more painful part because you have to question yourself what you want, pull things out of yourself that like are hard to do, admitting of like what the route is you take. I have a co-founder, our conversations around product. It's like, that's the harder part now, I would say.
Yeah, I can certainly see that with especially with the infinite options. Like if we do this, we go this way. If we do this, we go this way. What are we going to choose the right path? You never
You
know,
don't
right?
know, right? You just have to make like my biggest thing is you have to make a decision and kind of sort of commit to that decision for a period of time to just get into market and do. My co-founder is much more like let's think about this and like let's really, and I'm like, let's just do it. Let's just
Yeah,
like when we first started, I was like, all I care about is getting into market as soon as possible because like I can't live in a world where I'm working alone without feedback from actual customers. Like
right.
that to me is you could build forever and be like, but it's not perfect, but it's not perfect. And then, by the time it's perfect, maybe no one wants it or you have 10 competitors in your space. So I always think it's just like better to just do and go out there. And I try to operate like that.
Yeah. I actually had a director of product say to me one time, if we have a perfect product release, it was in development too long. And I
Yeah.
believe that
Yeah.
fully. Like
Yeah.
if we
Yeah.
way too long.
Yeah, I like every also maybe this has like shaped me a bit too. Like every, executive group and company I've been a part of, like the core values have always been like a progress towards perfection and, like done is better than perfect. Like
Yes.
those, like, at two different, very different companies, like that has always been the motto because eventually you'll achieve what becomes perfection of one piece of it and you'll be evolving other pieces to work towards that. But if you optimize towards perfection immediately, you're never going to ship anything. So
No, that's great advice. Done is better than perfect. That should be one of the headliner lines for this episode. Key takeaways for sure. Anyone listening, starting a business, done is better than perfect. I do want to ask because you said you wouldn't necessarily go back and change anything. What was something though that you were really proud of, something that you did early on? Like that was something that you nailed when you started Outlever.
well, we used to build. It's so funny. Like we did the thing that was like the inertia was pulling us in the direction of like satisfying our customers' um natural grasp towards something, and we didn't fight it enough. And that was when
Yeah.
we build our own media sites, we started building them on our customer sites to start. And like that is the natural, like when you think about a marketer, they're like on my site, me, my site, my site, right? Like that's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like those seagulls, mine. Um, but the reality is like when we're thinking about what we're doing now and the optimal case of what it does and what it can do, we should have thought that internally earlier and said that it needs to be done offsite and we need to create you a third party credible owned media site that is can be branded by you, empowered by you, but all of the benefits come from building a real audience and real trust outside of your company leading that conversation. Because when something adjacent to your company can lead that conversation, it's much more powerful and there's much more trust. And once you build that trust and you're integrated into that trust from day one, like all of these wonderful things happen. And we're seeing that now. But we like I would have done that day one and not thought we had a come to Jesus moment. We're like, oh my God, like the on-site stuff,
Yeah.
like we can't do that. We shouldn't do that. Like it's not working the way we want to. We're playing what we thought was easy mode because it's what our customers wanted to hear. But the actual
Mhm.
benefits of everything that we're actually doing are really what we thought from the beginning, which is building a news site that competes with TechCrunch and Forbes. And like that's what we're doing today.
Yeah. And I think that really comes down to ICP understanding, right? And so
Yeah.
wanting, as you said, right, it's this other entity off to the side, which is really making the difference here in terms of building credibility and not necessarily your first site, but the ease of use. The person who's actually using the platform is the one who it's easier on this site. So it's really, really digging into that and honing in and making sure that you're always listening. I can understand why that would have been an issue though, for sure. I
Yeah.
understand. I probably would have done the same thing. Make it
Yeah.
easy for the client.
Yeah, the other interesting thing, which I guess I can say because we're not venture backed, we're self-funded. So there's certain things I feel like I'm allowed to say right now. Maybe we will take venture money in the future, but um the I think like the days of like PLG self-serve SaaS for any company looking and wanting to charge like an amount of money that feels fair for what they're providing, like I like and seeing growth and being able to convert those over time and actually keep growing, right? I think the days of that are over. Like I think the players that have won in that space have won. And I think that aside from like vibe coding tools and coding tools like Cursor and, Lovable, you're seeing a ton of like consumer growth from those, right? I don't think it's enterprise at this level. Maybe developers within enterprises, but not as a whole. Doesn't have enterprise adoption in the way that other companies do. But I don't like I think every company today, like that's selling big deals, is going to have a heavy services component because people are understaffed, under resourced. Companies
Mhm.
are too fragmented. Even big companies with resources are too fragmented to expect someone else to adopt something else and use it regularly, right? It's like usage on these platforms and products. I wish someone would do a report across like everything that a marketer has and everything that marketer uses and how often
Yeah.
the touch points, because I guarantee you it's not what people say it is, right? Like adoption isn't
Yeah.
actually adoption. So a big part of our company and our place here is services, right? Like we're not an agency, but we certainly operate as like a full services. Like we're providing a lot of this for you. We're doing a lot of it for you. It's AI and it's tooling and it's products that we've built that enable us to do that. But if we expected people to step in and do all of this, it wouldn't happen. It just wouldn't happen. We'd be
Mhm.
waiting and begging and convincing, and it wouldn't happen. And I think even the future of what we're building, which is a lot more like, you can do this and automating things and allowing our customers to do a lot more, more easily. Obviously, the technology is evolving. I still don't believe like for what the models that we're going to go after. And I think we're working really well with enterprises. They want full service. They don't want to do stuff themselves, and they're willing to pay for that. And I think that's okay. But I think a lot of like the conventional wisdom of like VC companies is you can't have a services component. It's a solutions engineer that helps
Right.
you, set it up. But the services is a dirty word. And, like, but if you're going enterprise, they all want it anyway. So it's so interesting.
Yeah.
Just like a lot of learnings on that.
Yeah. I spent a lot of time digging into the services component because so I actually started in a service business and then went to SaaS after that, right?
Mhm.
So it was always very weird to me, to just further your point, it was always very weird to me that services was such a dirty word. And I understood it. Like I get it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
understand the finances behind it, all of that stuff. And so I was finally just like, there's got to be a way where we can productize service. There
Yeah.
has to be a way to productize service.
Yeah.
And in
Yeah.
every single role that I've been in since then, I have come up with a way to productize service because it is something that companies need and it is
Mhm.
something that VC doesn't like to back. So if
Yeah.
you can find a way to productize your service, that's where the core component is.
It's
That's it.
like if we ever shifted to like the companies we're working with and like what we charge them to do, like if we ever shifted to becoming a tool, we'd be way less valuable, even though we're doing
Yeah.
the same exact thing, which is so interesting because it's like that's what VC wants and that's what they believe in, that is that growth. But like all those companies are also building from like, mostly freemium user like
Right.
plans, trying to now get up to enterprise, and things are breaking. It's like they're trying to sell enterprise on 100 seats. But the problem is the pushback is that they won't use those seats. And how do you convince ROI? And can you get adoption across every company? And that's tough, and it's going to get harder. So I'm
Yeah.
all in on a services component of the business being core, especially if you want to build enterprise first. And again, like that's also, I think, the beauty of not being VC backed right now, which is like we've built for enterprises. We haven't built for founders or for seed companies, which is great because that's where our trajectory will head. And, we'll be an enterprise only company likely in the future, which is good. I'm fine
Yeah.
with that. Like if we can have
Yeah.
500 customers and we do a Harvey model or, like that's where we want to sit.
Right. It's all about knowing your ICP and going after it, right? So that's amazing. That's very, very cool. And it's nice that you know that now. It's nice
Yeah.
that you know that and that's our North Star. That's where we're going. It's not going to be we're SMB and we're trying to break into
Right.
enterprise,
Right.
or we're enterprise and then we're going to try and go down market too because there's more availability down there. Like
I
there's
mean,
so
like
many
also
of those
like the
conversations.
companies, yeah, the companies that also like when that happens, like that's pen, right? That's like we have to hire
Huh?
200 AEs and we have to build a customer support and it has to be in the Philippines. It's just like that is that's really hard mode, especially now. Like that I can't imagine doing that. Like knowing what I know now about how challenging all of that was at ClickUp. And ClickUp has a great trajectory, great outcome, great product, great adoption, right? Like it's best in class SaaS. And that was
Mhm.
so hard. And like
Yeah.
it's one of the good companies that came out of that era. Like so yeah, I don't know. Maybe the PTSD of like seeing that and also seeing a lot of those companies
Right.
go to zero and like, they hadn't been able to convert or hadn't been able to move up market. And,
Mhm.
Wall Street doesn't value companies that aren't selling into enterprises now because freemium users a dime a dozen and you're spending tons of money in support and, you know, data bills to be able to like support those for users who are never going to convert for you. So
Yeah.
long-winded,
And
but yeah, a lot to unpack, I guess.
no, it's fine. I love that. I could talk about that particular topic all day long. In
Yeah.
fact, I
See, I
might have
told
you
you that
back.
maybe it's a little dangerous because we're like going all over and we're just like, but yeah, all of it's very interesting. And I feel like the time we're in is just, it's so fascinating, like what's happening out there. It's really, really
Yeah.
fascinating.
It's crazy. And I don't know if this story will make the final cut or not, but I'll tell it to you anyway, is that we tried to go freemium at one of the last
Mm,
companies that I was at. And I think that there is a misconception that freemium equals easy. That you
mm,
should be able to
mm-hmm.
just turn on this easy thing and people will just go through and do it themselves. And the conversion rates are so incredibly low, first of all, so incredibly low. So you put all kinds of time and development into making this
Mm-hmm.
easy product,
Mm-hmm.
so incredibly low, but then you don't know how much product marketing you need after that to get the adoption curve up. And so by the time we were done, and we still had barely made a dent in adoption rate, and I'm talking 1 or 2%, we were at 20 emails, 20 guided in product
Yeah.
emails, touches,
Yeah. Yeah.
all of those individual things just to get someone to go from a free to a paid. That's all it was, just free to paid, free to
Yeah,
paid.
but that's also, but then you have drop off of that, and then you continually need
Yeah.
to optimize that because you see your rates lowered over time. Like nothing goes up and to the right, really. And then if it does, it
Sure.
always comes back down, and you're always fighting that battle. And it's like, so you once acquired that freemium user, and like, what's your CAC on? It's just like it doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's tough
No,
unless you've already
no.
have that product. And I think like, I don't know. I think a freemium product in today's day and age is it's kind of a death wish.
It's a risk for sure. It's
Yeah,
definitely a
yeah.
risk. Well, so I'll ask you just one more question and we'll use that as kind of the wrap up for this. And this conversation has been amazing. I love when these kinds of conversations go off the rails. It's my favorite.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm like
Because
stopping myself. I'm like, oh, this is going off the rails, but I think in a good way, right?
yeah, no, it is in a good way because it all comes back to the fact that these are all paths that you can go down. This is all chaos. This is all distraction. This is all stuff to think about as a startup
Yeah.
business owner, right? And
Yeah. And I'm
so,
sure for
I,
everyone listening, they're all going through this too and different variations of their own chaos, right? And I think
yeah,
like the more that people talk about it, the less you feel alone because we're all, regardless of what you're building on this journey together and, in this universe of building, right?
exactly, absolutely, yeah. Um, so I want to ask about the people process or
Hmm.
people aspect of your business because we always talk about people processes and systems here, having all three of those in place, but people is normally where I like to spend some time because if you don't have the people part good, like you don't have great
Hmm.
people, then the rest of it doesn't really matter. So what kind of stuff have you done to make sure that your people processes are, or I keep calling them people processes, that your people are good? Like you hired the right people, you've got the right people in the right seats. What are some of the things you did?
Yeah, I mean, hiring was really hard. Like, just like for us, the way that you mentioned, like category creation is hard.
Hmm.
Hiring when you're creating a category is hard because there's not a perfect
Wow.
profile. What we thought we were looking for, like you create like a profile of what your ideal candidate looks like. And for us, that ended up not really being the case. And we learned, I mean, we've
Yeah.
gone through a lot of people before we found our core team. Our core team today is amazing, but like, it took probably like a year to like get to where we are. Like, we're a little over a year old from going to market and it like we just now have this amazing team. So, we've hired 30 people that like haven't worked out. So I think it was just like
Yeah.
understanding like the type of person we need, the type of personality, the type of understanding, business acumen, like product experience, managerial skills, like all of those things that you think but if you're developing something
Mhm.
that there's no carbon copy profile for, um, it's tough. I actually said this on a podcast yesterday and I think he found it pretty interesting. So when we struck out, like we tried a lot of different things to hire people to start, and we struck out. And what ended up really working, we put our heads together. Me and my co-founder were like, "What do we do? Like we're hiring the wrong people. This is not working. Like what do we do?" And he's like, "What do
Yeah.
we automate everything?" And like, "Well, we can automate a lot of it, but we still need like a couple of really good people."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we vibe coded a Lovable app. And
Mm.
it's our version of an interview, like live app that people would go into, but there were a couple of rules and restrictions around it. So we looked for a couple of things in market and they just didn't have these like very small, but needed and necessary, like features and permission controls to be able to do what we wanted. And
Yeah.
effectively I launched on my LinkedIn. I said, "Hey, we're hiring for these two roles. We are looking for a variety of profiles. So if this kind of fits you at all, like apply." The interview process is super quick. It's 2 questions, video questions, but you're not going to be able to see the question before you hit record. So you're going to hit record and then the question's going to pop up and then you're going to answer the question and you answer 2 of those and like, that's it. And we determined these are the 2 questions that if someone can answer fluently, articulately and have a good perspective on them, they're at least worth speaking to on a second interview. And we had over 1,000 people apply and 20 actually completed the assignment. There were a lot of, you hit the button and then, like, and they were just like, I don't know how to answer this question. So, and the profiles of those people that didn't answer the question, and you could also go back and redo it if you read the instructions, but no one reads the instructions, which is also a thing. So we found that a lot of the people that would be the profiles we would have interviewed would click in and not know what to say and then never return to it, even though A, perfect profile on paper, and B, if they read the instructions, they would have realized they could re-record. So we're just like, it weeded out like everyone. So we ended up with 20 responses, 10 of them were really solid, and we ended up hiring 3 people from that pool. So it worked out incredibly well for us. Took 2 days to vibe code this thing, but it was the only solution and it worked really well. So I don't know. Sometimes you got to be creative.
Time that saved you though. Like how much time that saved in terms of all those interviews, 2 days to vibe code. Yeah, cool. But I mean, that's incredible. How did you come up with the questions to ask?
It was like basically a lot of our customers are enterprise and there were questions around agentic in the enterprise and like, what does that mean? And like, how are companies thinking about adoption and what are the big challenges right now? And if you worked in SaaS or you worked in journalism and on the beats and understood like what's happening, you were probably able to answer those questions, at least in a way that would be thought provoking, right? Like, hey, this is what I'm seeing. I don't have the full answer, but this is exactly like kind of what I'm seeing in market X, Y, and Z. It worked.
I love that. That is very cool. Yeah, that's a really good anecdote.
So impossible for us to hire. We hired the right people through this process. They're great. And we're building out our systems, building out everything kind of right now. And a lot of those people are shaping it, which is really important. Mm-hmm. Like the right people shape your process, shape your systems. And that's where we are.
That's a great endpoint. And I think the other thing just to kind of double down on is the fact that that's okay, right? It's okay to go through that process to find the right people to make sure that the right people are creating the process in the long run, right? It's okay.
Yeah. The worst thing you can do is build process around people that are not the right people because they're just gonna I said this, I think like a year ago, and it was like there's a lot of like process debt you can take on, just like technical debt, where you've built systems that break often. So system debt and process debt, like it's just as bad as technical debt if you can avoid it by making the right hires and building the right things and not doing that because when you have the wrong people in place, it's a big time saver, a big learning opportunity.
Yeah. Exactly. Wow. Those very cool. I'm so glad I asked you about people because that was those are great great answers.
And what worked at other companies didn't work for hiring here. And it's I think you're always in a different seat and you have to think differently depending upon where you are.
Absolutely, for sure. Great. Well, Melissa, thank you. This conversation has been amazing. I, again, appreciate your time so much for joining us today and for sharing your insights. This has been great.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was really fun conversation.
Excellent. All right. Thanks, everybody. And we'll see you next time on Scale Without Chaos. Thank you for tuning in to Scale Without Chaos. If today's episode sparked new ideas or gave you a fresh perspective, do me a favor. Hit that follow button, subscribe for new episodes, and share this with someone who's going through what we talked about today. This podcast is all about visionary leadership, sustainable business growth, and the systems that make scale possible. For more content, free resources, and behind-the-scenes insights, connect with me on LinkedIn, follow along on Instagram at Scale Without Chaos, and subscribe to the newsletter.